Hey headphone people, MrAyrit here. Got another headphone review for you today. This one is the Apos Caspian, which was sent out by Apos for review. You know, they didn't really say much else to me about it. They just want an honest opinion, so you don't have to worry about that. This was a surprising headphone for me. Honestly, I saw some reviews a while back of it. It seemed a little underwhelming is kind of the impression I got, but that really wasn't what I found. So let's dig into this headphone. We'll look at what it comes with, we'll look at how it's made, and then we'll talk about the sound and if they got it to what they were saying they wanted it to be. So let's take a look at what you get. Now, you saw the box there. It's really nothing too fancy, which is fine. I'm not a big box person. And one of the things that they state about this headphone is that they want it to be like made of sustainable materials and things like that. So I'm guessing that has something to do with, the economical packaging of it. They do include a really nice leather case. This is like the same exact carrying case as the Kennerton LSA stuff comes in. So just for reference, I happen to have another one right here, which I will be doing an LSA HP2 review at some point in time. I've got that on hand right now. But you can see basically the same exact thing. I'm not sure if it's actual leather or protein leather at this point. I find it really difficult to tell the difference a lot of times, which, if you can't tell the difference, who cares? At least that's my standpoint on it. So nice little carrying case. The headphone, it just kind of drops right down in there. Pretty simple. It's got a little pouch up there that you can store cables and things like that, which I thought was quite nice. Here's the headphone. We'll wait on that for just a second. Let's talk cable first real quick. The cable you get, I would say, is kind of reminiscent of like an HD 800 cable. It's cloth, it's pretty thick, it's got, chunky connectors on it and things like that. This headphone does use mini XLR connectors on each of the cups. It's it's maybe like a 6-foot cable, a little bit on the longer side. It does hold a shape, and I didn't find it particularly nice to use. But it's a decent cable. The one big gripe that I have about the cable is that the connector is a 1/4 inch and not a 3.5, which can be adapted to 1/4 inch, because these things are extremely easy to drive. So I think having a 3.5 would have been better, because then you could use it easily with portable players and things like that. So for instance, I really liked listening to this on my X-Can. Sounded really good on that. But I ended up using like a heart cable with it when I was doing that. Apos also sent out their flow cable for me to try out with this, and I do really like this cable. It's a little bit thicker than a heart system. Let me see if I can pull one over here. So here's the black and gray heart, and if I can... Sorry, just a quick little insert here. My microphone, for whatever reason, stopped recording at this point, so the audio from here on out probably isn't going to be that great. Just so a heads up. Again, I apologize. Get up a little bit closer for you there. You can see the Apos flow cables a little bit thicker, not as finicky, I would say, as the heart cable. It just feels a little better built, a little bit nicer quality to it. Of course, it is a pretty expensive cable. I think they run about like $150 maybe, so keep that in mind, but I did like the cable. It is a nice cable. Okay, so let's talk about the build of the headphone here. Looks are very understated. It does have wood cups here. They tout them as being like handmade wood cups, hand stitched, leather pads. Nothing stands out as being particularly bad about the build or the materials or the look of it to me, but at the same time it also just doesn't feel quite as premium as its price tag would suggest that it should be. So I feel like it does, it feels a little bit cheap just in use. It's comfortable. It feels fine. It works fine. It looks fine. Like nothing is bad about it. It just doesn't feel like the same quality as other things in this price range. So right now they've got this headphone for $500 on their site. which puts it up pretty much in my mind almost directly with the Focal Alex. And I feel like, the Alex, it feels like a $500 headphone. It's got all that premium feel to it. The Caspian doesn't really have that, I wouldn't say. I mean, it's fine, it works fine. Again, it just doesn't have that same nice feel to it as, other headphones in the $500 to $700 price range have on it, I wouldn't say. What else about the build? Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that really bothered me about it is the 3.5 connectors. I did struggle a little bit when I was pulling cables in and out of those. Just they didn't feel quite high quality to me. There was a little bit of play in them. Things wouldn't release quite right. Again, it sounds bad to say it like that, but in everyday use, it's really not much of a big deal. I maybe am swapping cables out more than the typical person would be. So it kind of just was on my radar. But, I'd say all in all, there definitely could be some refinement with the design, and I would like to see, some higher quality materials used and things like that. I'm not a particularly huge fan of the A on the cups. I think if they would just had the slotted material, or the slotted grill on there, that would have been a little bit more of a simpler, more subtle design choice that would have resonated a little bit more with me. And then just like probably the headband would be the other thing that I would look to improve. Again, comfort wise, it was fine. It just doesn't feel that great as far as like the materials go and things like that. But let's talk about the sound here, because this is where I think this headphone really hits its mark. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to jump over to the Apos site, and I want to just read verbatim what they said they were going for with the sound of these, and then we'll talk about the sound here. So here's what it says. The sound. We designed the Caspian to make you smile, not to be used as a microscope for analyzing every last detail. The bass is playful yet controlled, alive and extended with visceral rumble. The mid-range is compelling with a focus on realism and immersion. For the high end, we wanted all the airiness and sparkle of a quality treble experience without the fatigue. To get there, we introduced a series of dips between 2K and 7K hertz that protect sensitive parts of your hearing from fatigue. I think they nailed it, honestly. I mean, I think when you're looking at what their description is of the sound that they were going for with this, and after I had listened to it, I listened to it before I read that, and then I came back and I thought, well, I need to do a little more maybe in-depth research when I'm doing some of these headphone reviews, so I want to go check out the site. And I read that, and I was like, that is exactly what this headphone sounds like. So the bass is going to be the first thing that you notice when you're listening to the Caspian. It slams hard. Those Kennerton drivers in this thing, they really hit hard. But what's really cool is although there's a lot of quantity, and it really slams pretty hard, it never, I feel like, muddies or creeps into the mids at all. I feel like it is pretty well controlled, considering how much of it is there and the impactfulness of it. It's got good texture. You really feel the bass with this headphone, and I'm not a bass head, but I did find it to be pretty enjoyable and not overwhelming. So I mean, they talk about not being a fatiguing headphone, and I think they really achieved that, which is interesting because it is a more exciting headphone. I feel like when you listen to it, it's a very forward headphone. It's not a nuanced headphone at all. I mean, it is in your face, really hitting you with the music. And most of the time, that means fatigue after a while, at least for me. But not with this guy, which is really interesting. So moving up the frequency response, the mids, I think, are intimate. They're pretty close up. They are very natural sounding. They sound really, really natural. I don't have any complaints as far as vocals or strings or pianos or any of that. I thought they all sounded just like they should sound and had a nice bite to them without being too much. and just was a real fun, engaging listen. You move up into the treble, and they talk about controlling the treble and things like that. And I mean, I would say that that's true, but I also feel like that's perhaps a little bit at the sacrifice of detail and airiness. I don't really feel like these are an airy headphone. I feel like I'm missing some stuff there. I feel like the treble's rolled off a little bit. Now, for a lot of people, this is probably a pro. And honestly, for me, if I'm just listening to this, I didn't really miss it all that much, although I was kind of like listening for treble at some points and didn't really hear a whole lot of it. Going back to like the Focal Alex, you notice a lot more treble clarity and presence. And I do feel like this could use, like, if I was going to tweak the sound at all, that's where I would probably do it. I would bump up the treble just a little bit so I could just get a little more presence out of it and maybe a little more detail. These are not detail monsters, definitely not. They are not soundstage monsters. They are not imaging specialist, right? They are just kind of a put it on, have fun headphone. They put the information all kind of right there up for you to get into, and it's a very fun and easy headphone to just throw on and start to play music and enjoy it. But if you're looking for a little more refined, nuanced experience with a little better imaging, a little better, detail and separation, a little bit more of a soundstage or a 3D soundscape experience, you're not really going to find that here. Ultimately, I feel like this is a great first attempt at a headphone. I think, the way they have it priced, it's a difficult category to be in because you are competing with things like the HE6 SEV2. You're competing with things like the Alex. You're competing with things like the Anandas or the Hi-Fi Man XS, or there's just a lot of really great headphones that can be had around that $500 price point. And I think most of those headphones, they show a little bit more refinement than this Caspian does. That being said, I mean, this is Apos's first attempt at a headphone, and I feel like they got a lot right with it for the first time through. I like it. I mean, I think it's a fun headphone. I think if you want an easy to drive headphone, this is definitely one to look at. I didn't feel like it scaled particularly well with my higher end desktop setup as opposed to when I was just listening to it from my X-Can. I mean, it improved definitely, especially I'd say like detail retrieval and some space. I got more out of it when I was listening to it from like the Soloist and my Socris DAC, but it wasn't a huge difference. Something like the Alex scales a lot more, or the HE6 SEV2. It does come with kind of like a natural warmth, which I really liked coming out of like the solid state sources. When I put it on the tube amps that I have on hand, which are the TA20 from X-Duo and my ball head crack, I feel like maybe it went a little bit too far in that direction, so I preferred it on just solid state because I think it's got that natural kind of warmth to it. Side by side with the Alex, I mean, I have to say I probably give it to the Alex in most cases, but it wasn't the gap between them that I thought it would be. So especially the Alex, when I have it paired with the ball head crack, which I know the impedance doesn't match up quite right, and it makes the low end like a little bit looser, but man, it just makes it such a fun and natural listen. Like I really like the Focal stuff on tubes. So I think I would take this in that instance. On solid state, I could go either way, honestly, which is, I think, high praise for the Caspian. So I think, like, when it comes down to it, price-wise, I think if this thing, the build, I don't feel like warrants, $500. The sound, I would say, is pretty close to that, but ultimately, I feel like if they could price this headphone closer to, like, the $350 range, I think then they'd really be putting themselves, at a point in the market where they could really be super competitive with this headphone. But yeah, fun headphone, not hard to drive at all. Could drive it off of just about anything, and you know, just a fun, easygoing sound while still being exciting, which is an interesting combination. So, I mean, for the asking price, I'm not sure that I'd buy it new. If you could find one maybe open box, or if you could find a used model, you know, for around the $300, $350 price range, then I think this is something I would definitely be looking at and would even consider buying myself. I think that's going to do it. Apos, you know, I thank you for sending this out. I really appreciate that. And, you know, just for anybody that's wondering, like, again, they don't try to influence these reviews in any way. They're really good about sending stuff to people and just kind of letting us have our way with them, and, you know, just doing our own thing and giving some honest opinions. And I appreciate that from them. And they just seem like an all-around pretty responsive and good company. So I'm definitely going to link to these down below on their website. Definitely go check those out if that's something that you're interested in. As always, thank you for your time. You know, if you have other questions or alternative opinions, you know, definitely post those down below. I try to respond to just about every comment that's posted. And, you know, again, I just appreciate you being here. Thanks for supporting the channel. And I will see you hopefully in the next one.